They take an elephant, and when the elephant is small, there's a large stake that's driven into the ground, and a rope is placed around the stake and around the baby elephant's leg. And so when the little elephant tries to go too far, it pulls on the leg, and so the little elephant can only go so far. Well, the days go by, the months go by, and the elephant gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and yet that rope remains the same. And the little elephant gets so accustomed to having that rope around his leg that after a while, it never tries to go beyond the boundary. Well, what happens years later, you've got a huge elephant, and all that is needed is a little rope around the leg on a stake, and the elephant will never pull itself away because it has been conditioned to think, I can only exist within this circle. And that's true. And that's the power of our thoughts. When we really begin to realize that our thoughts have the capacity to keep us in liberty or in bondage, that what we think can actually create a container for us, or it can create a space where we get out of our own way and we open to higher and higher ways of living and being, and we're making ourselves available. So the starting point is to begin to realize that we have the power to change our thoughts. That if we're thinking something that is causing us to be stuck and limited and frustrated, that is taking the life out of us, then we can upgrade to a higher thought. And yet the next level is to tap into a greater level of awareness, which Eckhart Tolle talks about. He says, the moment we begin to start watching our thoughts, we have activated a higher level of consciousness. The moment we begin to start watching our thoughts, we've activated a higher level of consciousness. And now we're connecting with the divine mind so that it can impress itself upon us, healing us from the inside out. How does that look? When I was the minister in Maui, I had the individual to get to know H. Lee Shapiro. Now, Lee Shapiro does a lot of teaching. He does a lot of things, but he's best known as a pastel artist. He illustrated the book, There's No Such Place as Far Away. It's a children's book by Richard Bach. Lee Shapiro is a very creative man, and he has learned that all great artists have learned how to get beyond their limited thinking and open up to the divine mind, to let it impress upon them, sing through them, paint through them, draw through them. Lee shared a story one day at our congregation at the church in Maui. He was an avid kayaker. And this particular week, he had been out kayaking, he brought his boat back and he went for a little walk, and when he came back, his kayak was gone. Someone stole it. So he went home and he thought about it and he prayed and he said, Universe, God, there is nothing lost in the mind of God. And I am asking that my mind become available for you to show me how I can find my kayak. And he left it. Because he knew as an artist that all he needed to do was connect, put his intention, and then get out of his way, and the answer would come. What began to happen for Lee, he started having dreams, a reoccurring dream. He would be driving along, he'd see a path, he would go down the path, and there was his kayak. He dreamed the same thing several times. One particular day he was out driving, and guess what? He passed that exact road that he could now recognize from his dreams. So he backed up, he turned, and he went down this road, drove, until, sure enough, there was his kayak. But it wasn't just sitting there. Two really big guys were putting it on top of their car. That part was not in the dream. But he walked over and he said, where'd you get this kayak? And they said, well, we just got it from somebody. And he said, good, it's mine, you see. And he pointed out some stuff. He said, this is my kayak. And about that time, the guy said, I think you probably should just head on your way. So now he's in a bit of a predicament. Here he is, and if you see Lee, he's this kind of little man, and here's these two really big guys with his boat. What's he going to do? And he just said he said a prayer inside. All right, I was not guided this far to be beat up. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm pretty sure of that. And another car started coming, and as it did, they slowed down, and the guy rolled down his window, and he said, "Can I help?" Lee recognized the man because he was part of his kayak club, and he happened to be a police officer. And he said, "Yes, we do have a problem. This is my boat, and these gentlemen have it." So to make a long story short, the gentlemen were arrested. He got his boat back. Now, when we talk about the power of our thoughts, in Unity we spend a lot of time thinking about positive affirmations and denials and upgrading our thoughts. And that's very important. And yet I believe we're at a place where it's absolutely essential for us to go the next step. We know that, and to now take that next step and say, "Create in me a clean heart, create in me a clean, open space. And God, mind of the universe, impress yourself upon me in ways that I cannot deny, in truth and wisdom and healing." Many of you have done that. Joni, would you come up? Many of you have done that and are doing that. Joni Wiley, who has been a member of this congregation, shared a beautiful story with me during the meet and greet meetings that we had, and I asked her to share this with you. Would you please welcome Joni Wiley?
When I was 12 years old, I had terrible styes. And we're not talking little styes. We're talking large, swollen, horribly painful styes. Being 12, 13 years old, it was embarrassing. My eye was swollen shut. I combed my hair over my eye. Very embarrassing. One day my father knocked on my bedroom door, and he handed me a little tiny brochure. He said, "Read this." And I read very carefully, because I always did what my father told me to do. And this brochure gave me a step-by-step guideline to heal myself. I laid on my bed and asked God to be with me. I imagined white light starting at my feet, flowing slowly up my body. And I could feel that white light stop at my eye. And I surrendered. And I thanked God, and I never had another sty. When I grew older, I started having aches and pains. I raised 5 children probably half the time from my bed. I went to the doctor many times, and the doctor kept saying, "Well, it's all in your head, you're healthy as a horse." But I was very sick. Felt like the flu. It was very depressing. Every time I'd leave the doctor's office, I'd cry. One day, when I was 50, 12 years ago, the doctor said, "You have fibromyalgia." Thank you, God. I was so grateful to finally have a diagnosis. So I read all about it. I wanted to know all about it. And I didn't want to have fibromyalgia. Now by this time, I was studying to be a hypnotherapist. And I started learning how to use my imagination to program my body. So I decided to do some self-hypnosis. I asked God to come inside with white light, and I surrendered. And I said, "What's causing this?" And he showed me. And I dealt with that. Some forgiveness from my past. Forgiving others, forgiving myself. Now I proudly say that I'm the only person that I know of that has been healed of fibromyalgia.